Hello, everyone. This is Dave Sundstrom at Nevada Volunteers, and welcome to the webinar. Thanks for your patience. We were waiting for a few more people to join us, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dave Sundstrom. I am a volunteer for Nevada Volunteers. I've worked with Nevada Volunteers for several years, and that's my specialty as a service enterprise initiative and program. And joining me today on the webinar is...
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Norman. I am the AmeriCorps Vista with Nevada Volunteers, working just on the Service Enterprise Project. I've been with Nevada Volunteers for about 6 months, and I've been through one cadre training so far, so this is still a fairly new process for me, and I'm definitely still learning. And just so you all know, this webinar is going to be recorded today. We are currently recording, so it will be available after the webinar time as well.
And hi everyone, I'm Stephanie DRC. I'm the Visitor Services Director at the Terry Lee Wells Nevada Discovery Museum. Our organization has gone through the Service Enterprise Training, and we were the first certified organization in Nevada.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll all be presenting various parts of the webinar. You can enter questions to us in the chat window at any time, so if there are things that you would like to know as we go forward, and we'll try to answer your questions either as we go along, or we should have a little bit of time at the end of the webinar to address your questions. If you don't know Nevada Volunteers, first of all, Nevada Volunteers is the Governor's Commission for Service in the state of Nevada, and most formally that means that we are the organization that is chartered in the state and responsible for national service programs as they are implemented in the state of Nevada. Sarah noted that she's in AmeriCorps Vista. The AmeriCorps Vista program is administered by Nevada Volunteers for the whole state. And so you see on the slide that we do a lot with national service. We're based in Reno, Nevada, but we have responsibilities for national service and volunteer programs for the entire state of Nevada. We're actually going to be offering, for example, our first service enterprise cadre, our first service enterprise training in southern Nevada in the fall, which you'll hear a little bit more about at the end. So what do? You can see our focus here is to build a statewide volunteer infrastructure that expands service opportunities, strengthen service and volunteer programs. We try to create awareness of nonprofit service programs and also recognize those that are involved. Some of you may be aware of the Governor's Points of Light program, where we sponsor statewide service awards for people that have made significant contributions in nonprofit service organizations. So that's a little bit about us and what we do. So as an introduction, if you're in this webinar, you might be asking yourselves these questions, or maybe these are questions that you have pondered in regards to your organization. Are you looking to rev up or increase your volunteer engagement? And we assume that we do this as well. Are you interested in finding creative ways to save money, time, and energy, really through the use of volunteers? Are you wondering how to put a value on volunteerism, a dollar value potentially to your organization, so you know what the benefits of having volunteers in the organization is? And are you looking to deploy volunteers throughout your organization to better achieve your mission? You can kind of see throughout the questions that volunteer comes out significantly, and we'll talk a little bit more about how volunteerism is tied intimately into the definition of being a service enterprise.
I would also say if you have answered yes to one or more of these questions, you are definitely in the right place, and we are very happy that you're thinking about service enterprise. It's a great way to kind of get some of these questions answered and learn a little bit more about the process. So we hope that you consider service enterprise as something that you all would like to pursue. So we'll go ahead and go into some more depth about the service enterprise process and some of the benefits that you could get from becoming a service enterprise.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so the objectives of the webinar today. We're going to really give you a formal definition of what a service enterprise is, and it is a relatively formal process. So we'll talk about what the concepts that are embodied in being a service enterprise are. We'll describe the benefits of being a service enterprise, but Stephanie's going to help us with that because she mentioned that the Discovery Museum is the first certified service enterprise in the state of Nevada. So you can talk a little bit about the benefits that she's actually seen in deploying service enterprise in her organization. We will talk a little bit about the history and background of the SCI. It's been around for a while, so it isn't something that somebody just dreamed up. It actually has a lot of research that went into it. We'll talk about that. And then towards the bottom there, Sarah's going to talk about the SCI program model and timeline. If you're interested in becoming a service enterprise, what's actually entailed in that and how long does it take? And then at the end, she'll define the next steps in becoming a service enterprise. And we hope that some of you will be interested in kind of journeying with us to become a service enterprise. We should start because we use this term, and it really is a formal term. What is a service enterprise? You could think about that term. What is service? What is an enterprise? Well, it's a business of some kind. Although service enterprise is really a method and a model. Although it's specifically a model for nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit organizations employing volunteerism in what they do and helping, I think as we all are, Nevada Volunteers is also a nonprofit. We all have a mission. Our missions are different, but we're all nonprofits trying to help our communities in different ways. And so obviously we want to use volunteers to help us in achieving our mission in our organizations. So there is a formal definition. The formal definition is an organization that fundamentally leverages volunteers and their skills to achieve its social mission. And the other piece I'd focus on here is the term fundamentally. If you're online and listening to the webinar today, we assume you probably use, if you're in a nonprofit, you probably use volunteer services in one way or another. What distinguishes a service enterprise? Say it's looking at and deploying volunteers fundamentally throughout the organization. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. So this is the formal definition, and we'll kind of proceed from here. As I said, service enterprise isn't something that we just came up with in the state of Nevada or anywhere else. The Service Enterprise Initiative actually has, it's been around for quite some time. The basic work, the basic research that led to the Service Enterprise Initiative started in 2010. So it's been around for 6 years. Also, you might be able to see from this that the Service Enterprise is a national initiative. It's not just here in Nevada. Unfortunately, California beat us to it again. California was actually the first state that was a partner in researching and deploying service enterprise, but it is deployed throughout the United States by the service organizations and by other service enterprise hubs that help organizations become service enterprises throughout the United States. So you can see this timeline. There was some research done by a number of organizations. Common Good, Deloitte was involved, Taproot Foundation, and TCC Group. You may know some of those organizations. And they began in 2010. And they basically began with research trying to understand what was a successful nonprofit and what made those nonprofits that were most successful of all of us. What made them successful? Was there something common and something different that made them successful? And that led to them formulating a partner program and then eventually turning that, or I should say rather a pilot program, and turning that pilot program into curriculum materials that hubs in the United States, like Nevada Volunteers, could then use to help individual organizations pattern those and become service enterprises.
Yeah, I just have one more point to add really quick that Dave kind of just glossed over. So when they were doing the research with these nonprofits, these successful nonprofits, they found these outliers, these, what they call them, positive deviants, you know. So they were people that were, or organizations that were very good at what they were doing. So that's what the service enterprise model is based off of, is those organizations that were just succeeding above and beyond what other nonprofits were. So that's kind of where this business model comes from, is it's based off of those few positive deviants. So, Dave, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. And this timeline only goes out to 2014, because at 2014, the program was basically scaled out to hubs across the 50 states, and there are now organizations, I forget how many, 200 plus, I believe, certified SEI organizations in the United States, including 2 now in the state of Nevada. And Nevada Volunteers is the service enterprise hub for the entire state of Nevada. Again, you can see on this page, there are a significant number of organizations. Yeah, we didn't put Nevada Volunteers on there, but there are a significant number of organizations that are involved nationally in implementing the service enterprise across the United States, including CNCS, the Corporation for National and Community Service, that is really the organization that creates and manages national service programs. Points of Light, the organization that was created in the first George Bush's organization as a key nonprofit, national nonprofit organization, and a number of other organizations which you can see. So the research that was done, as Sarah mentioned, was across 3,000 nonprofit organizations. And again, they were trying to determine what made a successful nonprofit organization, and if there were common elements in those areas of success, and if those could be patterned. And what they discovered, in fact, was that one of the key elements, which relates, I think, to the definition of service enterprise, is that systemic volunteer management practices did, in fact, make these organizations more effective. And this is what you see on this slide is basically what they found. That number one, if the organization had a strong volunteer management model, if they had a plan and practices, that it made the organization significantly stronger. They found that having a successful volunteer organization and volunteer program basically translated directly into operational effectiveness. It made the operation work better, it was better led, it was better managed. Number three, they found that the organizations that did have implemented volunteer management practices were more adaptable, more sustainable, and this is certainly something that we're concerned about at Nevada Volunteers, as we want to help organizations, nonprofit organizations, be sustainable over the long term, that you can continue to provide your services for your target communities. And they also found that the organizations were better capable of going to scale, and the scale is defined as a staff of 50 or more, or 50 or more volunteers employed in the organization. That organizations, again, that had effective volunteer management practices could scale up. They also found, number four, that strong, well-developed human resources management practices really were required to sustain this level of success. One of the things that we probably say it over and over in the SEI training, is that organizations that basically look at their volunteers and their paid staff similarly, and have practices, HR practices, that treat their volunteers the same as their paid staff, do better. They excel. And lastly, something that we're all interested in, because everybody's always affected by their budgets and being good stewards of their expenses. They found that organizations, again, that did all these things were at least as equally effective as their peers, but on average at about half the median budget. So they were actually more effective with the budgets that they had. So what you see on this page, the service enterprise characteristics, and this is, I think in the webinar, one of the things that we'll talk about is kind of a central tenet of the service enterprise program, is that when they looked at these organizations, and Sarah talked about them being the positive outliers, the last slide talked about kind of the results that they were able to achieve, but then they started to look in more detail at what was it that they did specifically. How did they run their operations? What are the things they focused on and excelled on within their operations that enabled them to reach or to achieve that success? And what they found were the 10 service enterprise characteristics. They actually found 8, and they kind of revised them later to 10. So now there's the 10 key service enterprise characteristics. I only mention that because if you go back and look at some of the research, and you can certainly find this research on the internet if you're looking for it, sometimes they'll talk about 8, other times they talk about 10. These are the 10 that we talk about, and I think Sarah will talk more about the training itself, but if you were in the service enterprise training, you would find that we talk about these 10 characteristics and give you tools in order to evaluate and develop your organization in each of them. There are 3 that they found that are the most critical for every organization. The 3 most critical are planning and development, which you see right at the top, leadership support just to the right, and then on the other side of the circle you see effective training. And so in each of those are the 3 critical. They found that these 3 were really critical to every nonprofit organization, regardless of size, regardless of mission. Excelling in those 3 things was always correlated to the success of the nonprofit organizations they studied. So again, planning and development, leadership support, effective training. If I just briefly go around the circle, and I'm not going to go into these in a great amount of detail. One of the things that you'd find is if you're interested in the Service Enterprise Initiative and becoming a service enterprise, that we conduct overviews and orientations to the program where we talk about these in a great more amount of detail. But if you have questions, you can certainly ask. The other 7 then are resource allocation, how you manage resources in your organization. Resources not just meaning dollars, as you can see in the little diagram there, but all of your resources, your time, the people in your organization, the funds that you have, and maybe the capital and operations equipment that you have. Tracking and evaluation was found to be very important. That you need to measure what you do and establish repeatable measures that enables you to gauge how your organization is doing and make decisions about it based on that data. Outreach was extremely important. Outreach to partners, outreach to your community, outreach to various organizations that in turn make you successful. Obviously at the bottom, funding, I think probably goes without saying. Funding is important to us all. Effective training, I already mentioned. Around on the right then, onboarding and supervision is another critical skill, not just employing volunteers, but in order to deploy volunteers, it's very important to have effective processes for getting those volunteers into the organization and then incorporating them in your practices and supervising them as necessary to make sure they succeed and your organization succeeds in how to work with them and use volunteers in the organization. Technology and communications was another of the key 10 characteristics. I would actually turn that around and say communications and technology. The focus is on how you communicate in your organization, how you communicate throughout the organization, including volunteers. And then partnering to extend reach was the 10th of the service characteristics. So again, to summarize, what the research found was that organizations that were the positive outliers, that did better than their peers amongst nonprofits, excelled in general in all of these 10. Not every organization excelled in all 10, but in general, you had to be doing reasonably well in most of these to to be one of those positive outliers. Oh, and there you see the three. I didn't press the button. There you see the three highlighted, the three most effective, or the three most important. Okay, so we're going to go on and talk a little bit about becoming a service enterprise. If you want to add something? Sure. Okay, we're going to go on and talk a little bit about becoming a service enterprise and talk more about this. What we've talked about so far is kind of the background. Where did service enterprise come from? Kind of what is the model that's employed in service enterprise and what does it focus on? We're going to go on and talk about becoming a service enterprise. And so you can kind of imagine that, as we said, as a nonprofit, you probably employ volunteers today. But what we do in the service enterprise process is try to help you transform your organization into a formal service enterprise, meaning that you are running your organization according to the 10 characteristics, and the research shows that if you do, that should make you more successful in the categories that were talked about. But it is a change process, and so there are tools, and what we try to help you with are tools that help you assess your organization currently, and then decide where are those areas, maybe of those 10 characteristics, maybe in some of those 10 characteristics, some organizations, probably all organizations are probably doing well, and at least some of them already, but maybe not all 10. And it's very rare to find an organization that is excelling at all 10 from the beginning. So what we try to do is help you employ a process that moves your organization from the state you're currently in and the skills and strengths that you currently have to those that are identified with service organizations. And of course, that means that it's a reasonable amount of work, which I think Stephanie will talk about, that you need to incorporate some new behaviors that help you excel on those 10 characteristics, and just continue some undesirable behaviors that maybe are preventing you from getting to the results that you want. So we're going to go on then and talk about how does your organization benefit from operating as a service enterprise, but rather than have me tell you that, Stephanie is going to talk about the experience that she's had in the Discovery Museum.
So perfect. So again, I'm Stephanie D'Arcy. I'm the Visitor Services Director at the Terry Lee Wells Nevada Discovery Museum, which is a mouthful, so we call ourselves the Discovery. We opened 5 years ago. When we started, I was hired in July of 2011, and we opened in September. And basically, when I was hired, we had nothing, no formal program whatsoever. And you can go to the next slide. We had no formal program whatsoever. I was given just an Excel list of people in the last 7 years who may or may not want to help at some point during the program. So we really were starting from scratch, but we were under a really kind of tight timeline. We are a standalone nonprofit, a hands-on science museum, which I had not had experience before working at before. So we really were kind of, shooting from the hip, trying to figure out the best way to handle our volunteer program. So we created a program that was pretty good, not great, but pretty good. We really were working with what we had at the time, the resources that we were given, and really kind of were chugging along pretty well. We had a couple of changes in our leadership. We had a new executive director come in who really embodied, the characteristics of someone who would really believe in a strong volunteer program. So it gave us a good time to really reflect and look at what we were doing and what was working and what wasn't working, and really being supported by the leadership in that. So it was a great opportunity for some serious reflection on our program that maybe we hadn't had time to think about before. Our current leadership really feels strongly that, as Dave was talking about earlier, that we really look at our volunteers as staff, just on a different pay grade. So when we talk about staff, we're talking about paid staff and our volunteers. And so with that support, it was really a great time for us to jump into the service enterprise process, really with both feet, and really explore what it could offer for us. So our experience during the service enterprise process was great. It was more than we expected. We didn't really know what to expect, knowing that this was the first cadre in Nevada. So we didn't really have anyone to kind of tell us what we were in for. But that was really exciting for us because we did see, how much we could grow. So, the training process that we went through with Nevada Volunteers was great. It was 16 hours, pretty intensive training, and we involved myself, Valerie Gillette, who was our volunteer coordinator, and also Amber Ha, who was our HR director in that process. We really enjoyed the training, and it really forced us to really look at what we were doing and how to do it better. The next was planning, and planning took a lot longer than we expected. We are the people who, jump in and expect to, oh, we can do this, no problem. But with the planning piece, you're really kind of forced to look at every little detail and really not jump straight into implementation, but really focus on why you're making changes, what changes are most important, and prioritize those. So we spent a lot of time planning what we were going to do. After that planning time, we jumped into the implementation piece, where that's where we actually made some serious changes into our volunteer programs and our training and our resource allocation during this time. We a lot of times go straight to implementation and then just go from there. We run with it. But through this process, we learned a lot about evaluation and really deciding whether the changes that we made and the processes that we've developed were working and whether they were worth it. So after the evaluation time, we realized that all the planning in the world doesn't always prepare you for the real world and the reality of your program. So after the evaluation, we jumped right back into trying again. So we went right back to a planning piece, realized that on paper some things maybe worked, and in reality they didn't, so we tried again. So it was really an exercise in of the planning, replanning. So that was our experience. And it's been really successful. We've had lots of short-term successes, knowing that this will be a long process for us. Some short-term successes that we've seen, we've increased our volunteer retention. We were an organization that brought in a lot of people and turned over a lot of people. And although we had, our regulars that have been with us since the beginning, the majority of it was pretty short turnover. Maybe 3 months we'd have a volunteer and then they would move on for multiple reasons. But we've noticed that our volunteers, after we slowed down and really dove into the service enterprise process, that we're keeping them a lot longer. They have a lot more buy-in, which is great. We've created a much more structured program with additional opportunities for volunteer growth. So when a volunteer comes in, fresh to our organization, we've really developed a really structured training and development program where they can, expand on their own personal growth as well as growth within our organization. There's different levels of responsibility, and we found that that's been really helpful, not only for the volunteers, but for our organization as well. We've really worked hard on increasing staff buy-in and responsibility at all levels of the organization. When we first started, typically the volunteers were working mostly on the line, directly with, the direct service piece, directly with our visitors. And we've really increased buy-in at all levels and departments, where now we have volunteers who are serving on committees, in development, so fundraising, finance, marketing, much larger, diversity as far as our volunteer base goes. So that's been great. And then we've also increased capacity over multiple departments. Our marketing team is a team of 2. We now have multiple volunteers who are helping out specifically with marketing. That's, their background, that's what they love. And, that's increased the capacity for our paid staff to do so much more. in their day-to-day work. Same with finance and in our education staff as well. So those have been some of our, really general successes that we're excited about. But along with successes come challenges. We've definitely, had our fair share of challenges as well. And first off, it's really hard to dissect your program. A lot of us as volunteer managers are really close to our program and the processes that we have in place because we came up with them, and we care a lot, and we feel like, it's a real personal thing for us. So this process forced us to do it, to really look at our program and say, well, it's okay, and it's kind of working, but we could do it better. So this process was great for us to be able to really dissect the program, not because we wanted to, but because it's really an important part of this process. So it forced us to do that, and it was really, really, really helpful. Another challenge is there's initially some pushback from your staff. Change is hard, not only from us, but from all of the people that we serve in our organization. So we're really working, acknowledging that change is hard, and acknowledging that they were giving a little bit of pushback and addressing that really specifically was really helpful for us. So that was an initial challenge that I think we've really pushed through, which is great. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work, and sometimes it seems easier to just keep things status quo. It's working well enough, but we found that really pushing through and putting in the time really was about a year of hard work on our part has really seen so much success, and we're really proud of that. So what's next for us? So we've been certified, which is so exciting, but we know that there is going to be some continuous improvement. It's not a finish line. It is it's going to be a constant marathon, one after another. So we know that we're going to continue to improve, continue to go back to what we've changed and the processes we've put in place to make sure that they're still working for our evolving organization and evolving community. We really are focusing right now on consistent training and evaluation, not only for our staff who are working directly with our volunteers, but also for the volunteers themselves. We found that people really are responding well to the additional training and feedback, and so that's what we're really focusing on right now, is continuing to improve that. We're spending a lot of time discovering best practices. We're talking to other organizations about what they do and what works, and in addition to that, we're really sharing what we've learned. So we've really taken it on as we want to. We've been through this process, and we've feel we've been very successful, so we want to share that information with other organizations. So we've been spending a lot of time with other volunteer coordinators on the phone and in person, really kind of sharing our experience and inviting them to learn a little bit more as well. So that's really what's next for us, but knowing that this process really kind of kicked it off for us, and we've been really successful and really proud and excited for moving forward. So.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Maybe I can just add as a summary, Stephanie. Thanks. I think that was a great summary. A couple of the things that you mentioned. Some of the things that Service Enterprise focuses on is not just things that you do with volunteers, but things that you have to do with your existing staff. Sometimes you have to think about things differently, or provide help to your existing staff on how to better work with volunteers throughout the organization. You talked about the fact that it was a whole organization process. Everybody was involved. You talked about employing volunteers at lots of different levels. And one of the things we talk about in Service Enterprise, we talk a lot about skills-based volunteers. It's not, we need volunteers at all levels in the organization. Sometimes we need, people just to print things, but at other times we need people in marketing and people in finance and people in IT that have professional skills. So I'm having volunteers at all levels. And then you also talked about, which I appreciate, is it's a fair amount of work to make your it's a change process. There's a fair amount of work to do. I think I mentioned in the benefits that they found in the research that people were able to operate organizations at lower budgets. But it's not magic. You just don't go through service enterprise training and your expenses go down. You have to do fundamental work in your organization and your processes. And I think you summarized that pretty well. It's a lot of work and it's ongoing work.
Absolutely. Right? And I would say really quickly that one of the other successes that I think that I failed to mention is really the growth in visibility for our volunteer program, not only with our board, but with stakeholders, for grant opportunities, all kinds of things. It's really been great. They knew that we had one because we kind of existed in our own little silo and just kind of did the work and didn't really talk about it much. But with this process and with this national certification that really is a very big deal, it's really increased that visibility for our board, for our funders, for our stakeholders, for our volunteers. That's something that they're really proud to be a part of as well.
All right.
So, Sarah,
yes.
How do I get to be a service enterprise?
Yes, which is exactly what we're going to go on to next. So this slide here is just a kind of quick summary of essentially what Stephanie talked about. These are some of the benefits of service enterprise that are very general. Stephanie talked about some that were very specific to the discovery and what they've experienced. So again, basically service enterprise, you're able to use volunteer time as efficiently as possible. You get program growth, increased capacity and sustainability. Those are two big ones that I think attract people to the service enterprise program. And then I'm going to kind of skip a little bit to the bottom. You get improved community engagement. Generally going through the service enterprise process, things change. You get out into the community a little more. Like Stephanie said, you're not operating in your own silo anymore. You're kind of forced to communicate with others. So you get an increased or improved community engagement and hopefully an increased donor base and community supporters from that as well. So again, these are just a few of the benefits of service enterprise, and Stephanie definitely talked on them a little more in depth. So now I'm going to go ahead and go on and talk about Nevada Volunteers and how we've operated, as a hub in the state of Nevada. So essentially, our role is to help you become a certified service enterprise. That's our whole reason we're here, and we're serving the entire state of Nevada, not just the northern area. So I'm going to go through kind of how we do that. So in the application and pre-training stage, Nevada Volunteers is here to help support you through the entire process, but specifically in the application and pre-training stage, we'll initially talk with you and make sure that your organization is a good fit, make sure that you're ready to go through this process. In this initial phase, we'll also help you with the application and the Memorandum of Agreement, our MOA, so we'll help you through that process as well. And then also, before you start the training, you have to take the Service Enterprise Diagnostic. And this is basically just a baseline for where your organization is, and it will measure you nationally based on your size, as well as a few other factors, and rank you where you kind of stand as a service enterprise starting out. And we'll go into this, if you're interested in the service enterprise process, we'll go into more in-depth about the Service Enterprise Diagnostic a little bit later, as well as if you're interested, we'll definitely explain that fully when you start the Service Enterprise process. So now during the training, obviously Nevada Volunteers, we provide the training to become a service enterprise. The training consists of 4 4-hour sessions, so it's 16 hours total. And you will be trained by our volunteer team, which consists of Dave, Linda, who is not here with us today, and myself. And we are all volunteers. So I think that speaks pretty heavily to the service enterprise process. And then for implementation, so after the training, you are allowed 10 hours of coaching. So every organization gets this. And we'll help you through the implementation process. So any assistance you might need with making changes or planning changes. You know, we're there the entire process. We don't just train you and then expect you to do it all yourself. We're there to help you as well. And then as a hub, we also help you with certification. So when you are done with your implementation and you apply for certification, we walk you through that step as well. And so Nevada Volunteers, since we have been a hub, in which we started a hub in spring 2014, we have trained 11 organizations and 2 have become certified. So we have the Discovery Museum was the very first certified service enterprise in Nevada, and then we also have the Tahoe Rim Trail Association. They were the second service enterprise that was able to be certified. Okay, so now how do you become a service enterprise? I'm sure this is probably the question you are all waiting to hear. And Dave did mention earlier, we do have an upcoming cadre in fall in Las Vegas. It'll be at United Way, Southern Nevada. So if anybody is in the South and interested in being in this cadre, please let us know and contact us after the webinar. Even if you are not in Southern Nevada, please let us know if you're interested in the service enterprise process, because we are continually accepting applications for the cadres and we'll form them as needed. So definitely let us know. So I would say that's the first step in becoming a service enterprise, is connect with your hub, connect with Nevada Volunteers and let us know. And then we'll have an initial conversation with you, and that'll probably be with Janet and one of our trainers. Janet is our staff person here at Nevada Volunteers that's in charge of the service enterprise process. So she'll be a part of that the whole process as well. So get in contact with us. We'll make sure that your organization is the right fit, and then we'll have you fill out an application and the MOA and get the service enterprise process started. So definitely just let us know, reach out to us. Also, what your organization needs to have in place to be able to participate in the service enterprise process. So these are the things that when you initially contact us that we'll be looking for in your organization. We'll definitely be looking to see if you're ready to change. Change is a big part of the service enterprise process, so we'll try and assess from that initial phone conversation if your organization is ready, is stable enough, is geared up to change.
One of the things that you mentioned, Stephanie, we talked about is, I mean, it is a change process, and it does require the training and work for your organization to move to become a service enterprise. So as you said, Sarah, we have talked to organizations before that maybe just had too much on their plate at the time and weren't able to devote the resources. They wanted to become a service enterprise, but it wasn't the right time for them, or they didn't have the right resources at that time. So that's something that we would work with you, as Sarah said, to try to assess if you take your organization into the service enterprise process, will you be successful? And you know, again, that would be a kind of cooperative discussion to try to figure out what's the best for your organization.
Yes. So, so if you're interested, basically, if you're interested in the service enterprise process, please contact us. All right. So this is the program model. So these are the steps that your organization will go through. We've kind of brushed on this already. So you'll initially start with an application or a phone conversation with us to see if you're ready. Then we'll kind of go into an orientation period where we'll get in contact with the organization and make sure that, you know, everyone's kind of on the same page and that we understand what we're all entering into this process for. Next, the organization will take the diagnostic, which is, again, the baseline starting point where you kind of measure in the service enterprise realm. So you'll take the diagnostic, and then there will be a pre-training meeting where we will sit down with some key members in the organization and discuss the service enterprise diagnostic and the next steps for training. So after that pre-training meeting, we will begin the 4 4-hour sessions of training and coaching. So once the training is done, you'll then enter into the certification period, which for Stephanie in the Discovery Museum, I believe lasted almost a year. You guys finished the training in April, and then you were certified in March, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was about a year, and I think that this is typical for most organizations, is that it takes about 6 to 12 months after the training for them to fully implement everything and become ready for certification. So then certification happens, you apply for certification, and we'll go through that whole process. And then even after you're certified, there's follow-up and continuous improvement afterwards. You know, even though you achieve certification, this process doesn't stop. It's definitely something that's continued throughout, hopefully, the entire history of the organization. So, all right, so that's kind of a brief overview of the program model and kind of what it looks like. Next, we're going to go into a timeline, which breaks down the time of each stage a little bit more. So again, this is the timeline. This is what we've noticed with the organizations that we've worked with about how long it takes them to get through each phase. So the introduction, which includes the orientation meeting, that's that initial phone conversation to see if you're the right fit. And the application, I would say that entire process takes about a month. You know, once we get to know the organization and assess if it's the right fit, and then the full time for you to complete the application and MOA. And then we enter into the pre-training period, which includes the Service Enterprise Diagnostic and the pre-training meeting. I will say the Service Enterprise Diagnostic does take about a month from start to finish to get the results. And the Service Enterprise Diagnostic, 3 to 10 people in the organization take the diagnostic. So they take an assessment, and it takes about a couple weeks to get the results. So this process is kind of lengthy before you even enter into the training, and we just want to make sure that, you know, we spell this out so everyone knows what they're really committing to. So after the Service Enterprise Diagnostic, we will have a pre-training meeting, which lasts about 2 hours. The pre-training is basically where we cover the Service Enterprise Diagnostic and assess where the organization is starting the Service Enterprise process. And after the pre-training meeting, the organization will enter the training, which takes about 2 months. It is 4 4-hour training sessions, and we generally have a few weeks in between each training session. It kind of depends on our schedule, but so the training takes about 2 months overall. All right. And then once the organization is done with the training phase, they will enter the implementation, which again takes about 6 to 12 months. This is where the organization gets that 10 hours of coaching from Nevada volunteers. And this is also where you implement a lot of the things that you learned in the training. So again, this process isn't just a training, it really is a change process. You know, everyone has to go through this implementation period. It's not just a suggestion there. So we hope that you're actually implementing things from the training, and we check in and make sure that, you know, there is improvement going on in the organization. And then after that implementation, so once the organization has fully become a service enterprise, they apply for certification, which includes an evidence review. So the organization will submit evidence to Nevada volunteers. We review the evidence, which normally takes about 2 weeks, and then we conduct a site visit. So we are really getting a full, or the best picture that we possibly can of the organization when we enter certification. So that way we can fully understand, hopefully, that you've achieved a service enterprise. And then even after certification, again, this isn't a process that just stops. It's something that's continued throughout the entire history of the organization and onwards. So definitely a full change process and more than just a training. Okay, so again, this is also just kind of a summary of the next steps, what you need to do to apply to be a service enterprise. Contact us for more information, which our contact information is at the end of the slides, in the beginning as well. So if you're interested, please let us know. And once you contact us, you should also talk with staff, especially leadership. People at the executive level, you should let them know what service enterprise is. We would be happy to talk with anyone at the executive level to try and communicate what a service enterprise is and get them on board. So if you have any trouble with, talking to anyone on your staff or board, please let us know, and we would be happy to talk with people in your organization as well. And request an application. Have that initial conversation with us, and then fill out an application. And so that's exactly what you need to do to become a service enterprise. It seems very easy in the beginning, but trust me, it is a lot of work. So, yeah, it's well worth it. All right.
Sarah, do you want to mention something about the cost of the program?
Yes. So we are not exactly 100% sure what the cost is for the fall cadre yet. We know it will. We're currently working on a business model right now to try and find the full value of service enterprise and what we should charge for it. So we're currently working on that, and we will let you know what the cost of the fall cadre will be as soon as we figure that out. So if you're interested, let us know, and we'll let you know when we have the cost figured out.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd say, basically what we charge for service enterprise is in line with our costs of providing it to you, the training and the coaching and the like. So we feel that if you looked at any professional coaching of organizational models and the like, you would find it to be very, very expensive. It can often be $1,000 a day or more per student, and our costs are not at that structure. What we do is, it's our mission to try to help organizations become more effective, and so our costs are basically to help defer our costs and help make you successful. So the program is very reasonable. If you want to know the exact cost, please let us know, and we'll help you with that.
Yes, and for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of skip over this slide because I think it's more important that everyone has a question and answer time. So if you have any questions for Dave, Stephanie, or myself, you can go ahead and unmute, or Dave, you can take over the control.
Let's see if we can unmute everybody. Let's see if we can unmute everyone. Or you can also type questions in the chat window.
Yes, so if you have any questions right now, please go ahead and type them into the chat window, and we are going to try and figure out if we can unmute everyone. So.
Okay, and while we do that, Sarah mentioned that you could contact us. You can contact us here at Nevada Volunteers. You can call us. This is our main number, 775-825-1900, and ask to speak to someone. You could ask to speak to me or to Sarah or anyone about the service enterprise. Or you can send us mail at sei@nevadavolunteers.org.
And I would add as well that if you wanted to talk a little bit more about, what service enterprise looks like in an organization who's utilizing it, please feel free to contact me as well. My email's not up there, but I'll give it to you. It's SD, like dog, ARCY, @nvdm.org. So please feel free to reach out.
Okay, so while we're looking at all the really interesting exhibits at the Discovery Museum, we can ask to talk to you and talk about service enterprise and do both of those things at the same time. Okay, are there any questions?
Even questions for Stephanie, somebody that has been through the entire process. She is willing to answer questions as well. So, yeah.
No questions? We don't see any questions at this time.
Okay, we're just going to stay on the line for a few more minutes just to see if any questions come in. But thank you all for coming and joining our webinar today, and we hope that you've benefited from it and learned a lot. And please contact us if you're interested in service enterprise.
Okay, and thank you, Stephanie, for taking your time to be with us, and congratulations on being the first certified service enterprise in the state of Nevada. All of you on the line, you could also do us a favor. Some of you may have heard about us kind of through word of mouth from organizations that have been trained. So If your organization, if you're not sure that your organization is ready to do the Service Enterprise Initiative, I would say contact us, and we would try to think that through with you. Although you may know other organizations that you think could benefit from the initiative, and I think, as we all said, Nevada Volunteers is focused on the entire state of Nevada, to all the corners. So if you know of organizations anywhere in the state of Nevada that you think would be interested, please pass our information along to them. And Sarah also mentioned that the next cadre will be in Las Vegas. We've had two cadres. Three cadres. I've been in them all, and I've heard they've all run together. 3 cadres here in Northern Nevada. There will be future cadres also in Northern Nevada. So wherever you might be, if you're interested in the training, please let us know, and we'll figure out how to work that out with you. So again, thank you all for your time. Thanks for joining us today.